start getting going, will just be able to deal a bunch of damage. And here it is, led immediately on both sides. Fluttermane and Calyrex for Gabriel, and the Ogerpon and Calyrex for Marco. That's going to be having Follow Me support there to protect the Calyrex from the Fluttermane, but also has the option of just going for spread moves all around here.
Yeah, pretty fun way to start this game. A lot of traditionally offensive Pokemon both sides. I see a quick lock-in from Agati, probably seeing a lead combination perhaps he was expecting to see here, and we could see a lot of fireworks to start out this match. Perhaps not the same sort of passive approach we saw at the beginning of our previous top 8 match.
Yeah, well, Gabriel has decided what he wants to do, but Marco is taking his time here. You know, does know that can Follow Me, but the Follow Me will do nothing against the Astral Barrage or even a potential Icy Wind coming out from the Fluttermane to try and win the speed ties, potentially. There's going to be the normal Terrestrialization from Calyrex on Gabriel's side to protect itself completely from any Ghost-type attacks from Marco, while Calyrex for Marco will just protect itself, so try and scout out a little bit about what's coming. Gabriel, though, with the Astral Barrage, will deal good damage to the Ogerpon and will be followed up by the Shadow Ball. And if this Hearth Flame Ogerpon can survive, it can also put down some big damage onto both of these Pokemon, potentially breaking the focus or getting the Fluttermane down to the Focus Sash. But the double up just barely misses there. Ogerpon hanging on with just a sliver of health and brings Fluttermane right down to Sash.
That's such a huge difference, where otherwise that would have just been a clean knockout, predicting the Protect from Agati. Not quite able to do enough damage. That Ogerpon, which is trained just right, able to get an extra 130 damage on that Fluttermane. That's a huge swing, and leads to a pretty even first turn from what otherwise could have been a huge disaster. And I think if anything, maybe Marco feeling like he came out a little bit ahead there, not committing the Terrestrialization, having a few more options for the remainder of this game, but very anxious situation for both sides as the two Calyrex faced off with two 1 HP Pokemon beside them.
Yeah, the Fluttermane may be a little bit more useful than the Ogerpon at 1 hit point for at least a moment. It's going to be the Fluttermane retreating as Gabriel wants to preserve that Pokemon for a time when he can have the Sun out to activate that Photosynthesis boost. Switches in the Screamtail, so Screamtail making an appearance here in our top 8 matchup. Doesn't need the Sun, uses the booster energy to boost its speed instead. Marco will also protect the Hearth Flame Ogerpon once the opportunity to go for a Grassy Glide or a Follow Me in the future, and instead it will be Zamazenta out on the field. Now, because the Calyrex on Gabriel's side has Terrestrialized into the normal type, Marco has to match it with the Dark Terrestrialization, lest it face a easy knockout from another Astral Barrage. There's a Terrestrialization, and here is the Astral Barrage coming out from Gabriel's Calyrex. Deals decent damage to the Zamazenta, but the Calyrex tanks it like a champ and fires back with a Psychic into that Screamtail. Not very effective damage. Actually a really strong position there for the Screamtail here.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a big Psychic, though, because I think otherwise the Astral Barrage is setting you up for a very disastrous Encore. Sort of a fun interaction between the Zamazenta and the Screamtail. Typically, we think of Zamazenta mostly as a one-trick attacker with just the Body Press. This is one of the few situations where it's actually relevant to have the option of using a Heavy Slam here, where super effective, at least do a reasonable amount of damage to the Screamtail and maybe work toward removing the threat of those Encores and Disables for the rest of the game.
Yeah, getting rid of those Encores and Disables is a priority. Otherwise, you have to kind of second guess every move you make. But it's all going to come down to if you can get these calls correctly, as Screamtail just protects this turn to scout out what Marco is going to do. Try to see, what do I want to Encore or Disable in the upcoming turns? Zamazenta and Calyrex both eat another Astral Barrage, but Marco doesn't fall for the Protect here. Gets good damage onto the Calyrex, takes the Life Orb recoil, and Zamazenta, though, goes for the Heavy Slam into the Screamtail. So now that Screamtail, by protecting it, has some options here. What do you want to lock Marco into? What options do you want to remove from Marco's pool?
My heart stopped for a second there. I think if that had been a double target of the Calyrex, this could have been a huge swing of the game. Instead, still kind of on a knife's edge. All of these weakened Pokemon are facing off, and yeah, maybe Screamtail going to get to determine some of what happens here. Also scary a little bit, the normal type immunity to Astral Barrage, kind of limiting the options for Marco. Neither of these Pokemon able to be really attacked by the Calyrex too efficiently, having to use that Psychic, and disabling it would stop it from being able to attack the opposing Calyrex at all.
Yeah, the one thing that is bad about the Zamazenta going for an attack is it can't protect its own Calyrex with the wide guard or itself. The only way to do that is to switch the Calyrex out right now for the Raging Bolt, which should be able to take a Astral Barrage coming out from the Calyrex, especially with this wide guard connecting on Marco's side. So Gabriel now will have the ability to go for any attack that he wants, goes for the Encore into the Calyrex, but with the switch, that is actually a free switch-in for the Raging Bolt, blowing the Encore and the Astral Barrage into that wide guard.
Yeah, it's sort of an awkward position. Both of these Pokemon only know spread attacks. There's only the Dazzling Gleam for actual offense from the Screamtail and only the Astral Barrage from the Calyrex. I was kind of wondering if we wouldn't perhaps see a Leech Seed that turn instead because, like I mentioned in the previous turn, the Screamtail is kind of forcing the Calyrex to, or threatening a very powerful disable that would have otherwise made it useless, right? So the switch there, I think, was pretty likely. Still, a lot of ground to be made here, but I think that was a pretty big switch for Marco, who now has an advantageous position, although maybe he doesn't think it's as advantageous as I do, switching the Zamazenta out of battle before it can be disabled or encored.
Yeah, Zamazenta is now out of the field, brings in the Ogerpon instead, another Encore into a switch, so the Screamtail is not going to be able to make anything happen, but Calyrex has just enough health to make a substitute for itself and protect itself from this Thunderbolt from the Raging Bolt. And now you have the 1 health Ogerpon and the full health Raging Bolt still against the Screamtail and the Calyrex. And Gabriel really needs to make something happen with this Screamtail lest it just go down without doing anything.
Yeah, pretty awkward position here. You could use a Dazzling Gleam perhaps with the Screamtail this time to prevent the Ogerpon from attacking, but there's enough moves with the Raging Bolt that even with Disable or Encore or something, there would be some means of knocking Calyrex out, so no way to keep it completely safe this turn if you choose to go for an attack. Marco's done a pretty good job of cycling, avoiding letting the Screamtail be disruptive, still having to pay the tax of switching repeatedly, but hasn't gotten caught or he just wasted an action in any turn yet.
Well, Ogerpon is going to continue the switching frenzy on Marco Silva's side. Switches out for the Zamazenta once again. Back out on the field, this Dazzling Gleam from Screamtail doing just a chip to Zamazenta and a decent amount to Raging Bolt, all things considered. And all the Leech Seed misses. Raging Bolt will be able to fire back with a Thunderbolt into that Screamtail, but that Leech Seed missing was huge. Calyrex would have loved to get that health recovery back.
Yeah, I mean, the damage may not have made a huge difference, so certainly it adds up, but it's a big deal because you'd like to get back to a point where you can at least threaten using Substitute. That makes it a lot more complicated, and now this is a tough position where the Calyrex really needed that positioning where Raging Bolt has it checked pretty hard now, and there's still that situation again where Zamazenta can prevent either of these Pokemon from attacking normally, so Raging Bolt's actually fairly safe on this turn.
Yeah, Gabriel got the read correctly, but didn't land the Leech Seed, and that's going to set him back quite a bit. There's the Thunderclap finally coming out from Marco Silva. Will pick up the KO onto the Calyrex. Does mean there are still no wide guard coming out from the Zamazenta because the Thunderclap was able to move first, which means this Dazzling Gleam will connect, and Screamtail does finally pick up the KO on that Zamazenta. Gabriel has done a great job of getting a little bit of chip damage here and there on all of Marco's Pokemon, such that the Screamtail was finally able to pick up that KO, and he still has a full health Koraidon in the back.
Yeah, the Koraidon's going to have to do a lot of work, though. As long as this Raging Bolt's on the field, Fluttermane really not going to be able to accomplish too much. Really, again, seeing the negative impacts of not landing that Leech Seed. It's a very important Pokemon in this game to still be on the field, and fortunately removing that wide guard just in time to not really have any need to use it. The Calyrex coming back out on the field, though, somewhat threatened by the Screamtail here. Not really known for its offensive aptitude, but really winding itself in some beneficial positions in this game.
Absolutely, and the Screamtail still able to threaten Encores and disrupt Marco's game plans, and that could be really big in making space for this Koraidon. With the booster energy, and now even if the Screamtail would switch out, it is still the fastest Pokemon on the field, so has the opportunity to move first and either Encore or disable Marco into some plays that he doesn't really want to do right now.
Yeah, and suddenly the Screamtail is feeling like a win condition you might want to try to preserve. Ogerpon also just going to be instantly deleted, right? So if you get to a point where Raging Bolt can't knock you out, Screamtail now just wins.
Well, Koraidon going for the Protect, trying to save itself from any kind of attacks from that Calyrex or the Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt goes for another Thunderclap, but it will fail as neither Pokemon use an attack which could be affected by Thunderclap, and now it is disabled. Will not have access to that move for the remainder here as Astral Barrage picks up the KO onto Screamtail. And that's actually a really huge disable, which means that Marco no longer has priority, so this Flutter Mane gets to come back out with the Sun Up and get its own Photosynthesis boost to threaten both the Calyrex and the Raging Bolt with no risk of being Thunderclapped.
Yeah, probably a more conventional way to try to close this game using the more offensive Paradox Pokemon here with the Flutter Mane instead of Screamtail doing its best to pretend. Pokemon disadvantage from Gabriel on that, but probably a more advantageous board state now that as the fastest Pokemon who could check the Calyrex and Raging Bolt suddenly in a much more difficult position with the Koraidon checking it better without the Thunderclap. There's the option now to try to sacrifice a Pokemon. Certainly any damage to the Ogerpon in the back would allow Switch, maybe you get undisabled that way, but still some cost to be paid if that's the option that he chooses to go for. Especially potentially giving up a free Flame Charge to this Koraidon who could maintain the speed advantage and then maybe get in a position where it doesn't matter so much if the Thunderclap is used or not. Yeah,
if the Koraidon is able to get a speed boost, it should be able to close out this game with some support from this Flutter Mane as well. There's the withdrawal on the Raging Bolt to sacrifice this Ogerpon just to reset the disabled Thunderclap on the Raging Bolt. Ogerpon now out on the field, but not for long. Calyrex will protect itself, which means that this Moonblast will do nothing into it. But critically here, Koraidon knocks out the Ogerpon with this Flame Charge, and then Raging Bolt comes back in, has its priority again, so that the Flutter Mane is now threatened once more. But Koraidon is in a great position to close this out potentially.
Yeah, the Raging Bolt does have the Dragon Pulse move, which would be a little scary for the Koraidon. Can't attack both Pokemon at once. So getting a read right here for Agati probably closes the game. And maybe even if you get it wrong, the Koraidon's definitely got full health here. The one healthy Pokemon remaining, still 3 turns of that Sun. It does matter here because you do want to deal with the Calyrex probably before the Sun fades, with the Flutter Mane speed being a pretty vital factor here. Also worth keeping in mind, it will increase Raging Bolt's stats as well. We think of it as being an electric type, so you might associate it more with Miraidon, but is a past Paradox Pokemon.
Absolutely. That means that the Sun will activate its Photosynthesis boost, which was special attack here. This is a really tight position here. Gabriel has the speed advantage. The Calyrex on Marco's side did use Protect last turn, so you should feel a little safe to target into it. But if you get the double Protect, 33% of the time it works every time, and there it is. The Thunderclap connects onto the Flutter Mane and knocks it right out. Have to see if Gabriel called this targeting correctly or went all in on the Calyrex. There's the collision course into the Calyrex. That is extremely unfortunate. The double Protect giving both the Calyrex and the Raging Bolt a shot at this.
Yeah, it just seems like Gabriel can't catch a break this game. Mitch, the lead seed, had that low HP survival for the Ogerpon, and now the double Protect working against him. Would have been all but locked if that double Protect hadn't occurred, but now this is a very difficult decision. Far from over in this game. Koraidon could potentially pick up a knockout on either of these Pokemon. Just have to kind of figure out what he thinks that his opponent will do and whether or not he thinks he can tank a Dragon Pulse in the Sun.
And or a Psychic from the Calyrex on Life Orb. Unclear if either will work. Just have to see how this Koraidon is trained here.
Yeah, if nothing else, maybe learn a little bit about how the opposing Pokemon are trained as well that can be used throughout the rest of the set, but a very challenging decision here for Agati to have to make.
There is the potential to stall out the Sun here so that the Raging Bolt is less threatening. And Koraidon definitely does not need the extra damage from the Sun right now. We'll be happy to just use regular Collision Course to pick up these KOs. There's the Psychic and the Dragon Pulse into the Protect. And actually, I just noticed time on Gabriel's side is looking pretty slim, so we might be getting pretty close to a timer victory here.
Yeah, although it looks like, I think Agati probably think, no. I don't think I can survive either of these attacks. I'm going to need to get a double Protect myself. That would cause the Sun to go down, and you probably knock out the... we do see the double Protect. So the plan here, I think, will that be to target down the Calyrex, knock it out, unless you think, you get the Protect here, so better yet. Unless the Calyrex gets a third double Protect in these final few turns, you can kind of go for an attack there. Raging Bolt's going to fail its own Protect, so nobody wanted to swing that turn. Maybe try to get that knockout in the Calyrex slot, and then hope you survive the combination of attacks with the Raging Bolt now that its boost has expired.
Yeah, well, without the boost, it's going to be hoping for the Raging Bolt to be unable to pick up the KO with a combination Dragon Pulse and Thunderclap. Here's the collision course coming out from Koraidon, picks up the KO onto the Calyrex, and this Dragon Pulse is going to be so important. How much damage is Marco going to get outside of the sun right now? Raging Bolt is gathering its energy to swing at the Koraidon, fires off a beam, and that's so much damage. 31 hit points left on Koraidon. I don't think that's enough hit points.
I mean, that's so much. I mean, it resists the Thunderclap, but I feel like that's just way too much damage. Going to come down to this final turn, but oh, it's going to be close. But Raging Bolt maybe going to be just strong enough.
Yeah, the storm clouds are forming over the battlefield as Raging Bolt prepares to fire off a Protect. The other option here is that Collision Course does only have 8 power points max, which means that we could be at a situation where Marco wants to see if you can run out the, well, there's still 5 left, so that would be pretty difficult. It's going to come down to this Thunderclap. That's enough.
Okay, well, there we go. That was
all right.
Took a long and winding road, but we got to the end game we were expecting there, and after a really tight match, Marco able to take the first game in that set. Exciting first game, and yeah, I think with as stressful as that game looked like it was to play, this is one where having that early 1-0 advantage could be pretty impactful on the psychological end of this match.
Yeah, absolutely. Heading into this second game of the set, lots of information from that first game, and honestly, you know, it really felt like Gabriel was kind of in control for a while there, even though he kept missing the encores and disables on the Screamtail, even though he missed the Leech Seed onto Marco. Marco always seemed like he was reacting to what Gabriel was doing and just happened to have a little bit left in the tank more than Gabriel did at the very end of that set. But if I'm Gabriel, I still feel pretty good about how game 1 went.
Yeah, I think I kind of have mixed feelings about what I think is going to happen here, because I fully agree with you. I really like the way Agati played that game. I think he's perfectly capable of winning two more just like that. You know, maybe would have won that game if the same things had happened in a little different roles. The problem I have with this, I feel like I've seen Marco play this set 100 times, where he's been on stream so many times, things don't look super good, and at the end it's like, winner, Marco, hooray! You know, especially with the 1-0 advantage already, you know, it's still tough to get him twice in a row.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge uphill walk to climb here, as Gabriel Agati needs to win 2 in a row to stay in the tournament. If Gabriel Agati is eliminated, not just North America, but Latin America will be eliminated from the North America International Championships, and we would be well on our way to an all-Italy semifinals.
Yeah, I'm very curious about this second game as well. I think one thing that was kind of interesting, remember how quickly Agati locked in for that first turn of the first game. Felt like he had a very clear game plan going in. Curious if he's a little shook, or if, you know, he still has an orchestration for how he wants to play through the remainder of this set.
Yeah, this is one of those key moments. You've just lost your first game. How do you bounce back? Calyrex and the Fluttermane for Agati, and it's going to be the Zamazenta and Calyrex for Marco. So Marco getting the wide guard support on the board immediately, so as not to necessarily have to use the terrestrialization as early as he did in game 1.
Yeah, I think the Zamazenta didn't have a great game 1 in general, where I think it had a lot of opportunities to make plays, and it seemed like Marco is struggling a little bit to make the right read with it. Again, one of these situations that's scary in a game 2 where he's already up 1-0, where if he gets a read right once or twice, you potentially can blow a hole open here. Going to have to try to predict potentially a Astral Barrage correctly, or maybe the terrestrialization correctly, right? If you can sneak a body press in this time on the normal type Calyrex, this match could be over quickly. Lots of potential problems with the way this could play out. I think also the Fluttermane, pretty much a total non-factor in that first game because of what happened on the first turn of that situation. So, you know, do you want to risk it again and perhaps be able to have a solution where it can help deal with a Raging Bolt that may be in the back for you this time? Calyrex is going to protect those, so we'll have to see what everyone else does.
Yep, no terrestrializations here in turn 1. Both Calyrex instead will just protect themselves, leaving the Fluttermane to combat the Zamazenta on its own. A little bit of damage with that Moonblast. That chip all adds up, but will again lose its Focus Sash on turn 1 to a Heavy Slam.
Yeah, feeling a little bit familiar here with the Fluttermane. Again, weekend and again going to be in that situation where it's going to have a hard time getting too much done. Not a whole lot of damage on that Zamazenta for its troubles. It's better than nothing, right? It is an important Pokemon to remove. We saw how problematic the Wide Guard was in the previous game, but I think I probably want a little more than that if I'm Agati. On the flip side, the Calyrex got through the turn decently. What do you do, right?
Decently, but in the same position.
Yeah, and I think it's not an Ice Rider Calyrex, right? It's pretty tough to get the Leech Seeds rolling here. You'd be threatened with a lot of damage going the other direction. You're kind of forced just to flee the battle.
Oh, this is an aggressive call out from Gabriel, switching out the Calyrex on his side to get the Sun on the field and activate the Fluttermane's Photosynthesis boosts its speed. That's also going to be matched by the terastallization on the Fluttermane. That's going to be the Stellar Terra type.
So I guess is the feeling here that you're trying to use the the protect for both the Calyrex to bait your opponent into terastallizing its own Calyrex, then punish it. And we've kind of seen some plays like this look really good and really bad this weekend. It's just going to be the wide guard coming from Zamazenta, no terastallization.
No terastallization, so this is going to be more of a middle of the road play. You still get more damage down onto the Calyrex, but you don't get the one-hit KO that a terastallization would have given you, and instead the Astral Barrage will pick up the KO on that Fluttermane in return. And that means that there is no more terastallization available for Agati.
Yeah, that's a ton of damage to take on your Koraidon just to be a damage boost for the Fluttermane, giving up both your terastallization and the Fluttermane for that. I just don't know if that's going to be enough. The Calyrex going to take some recoil damage here, so it has been weakened, and now the Screamtail able to come in and either disable that Astral Barrage or maybe try to do some damage of its own with some attacks here. But that's a big deficit now. We're both a Pokemon down, but I think critically, where the damage went and where the resources have gone, Agati's going to have to start getting things right really quickly, or we're going to have our second Italian player moving on to the semifinals.
Yeah, and the Screamtail has some options here, can block the wide guard for the future so that Gabriel could at least go for a coin flip on the two Calyrex, depending on how they're trained. Also has the ability to potentially disable that Astral Barrage from the opposing Calyrex to save the Calyrex in the back for Agati as well. But you can only do one at a time. And you really want to be able to do both right now as Marco finally goes for the terastallization. Said, okay, you used your trick, I'm going to go ahead and terastallize my Zamazenta so that your Koraidon can't knock me out.
Yeah, I guess that's some of the benefit, too, of the way this is played out, where I don't know if you should be able to do that terastallization in this matchup, but that's how far Eddie's become. It's going to make it much more difficult to deal with this Pokemon.
All right, well, the choice is to disable Wide Guard from the Zamazenta, no longer has access to it, while the Koraidon is going to go ahead and protect itself from this Astral Barrage. That would have definitely been enough to pick up that KO. Instead, it's going to be the Screamtail that gets knocked out in a one-hit KO from the Astral Barrage on Marco Silva's Calyrex Shadow Rider. That is now at +2. Takes a little bit more recoil damage from the Life Orb, but given the final two Pokemon left for Gabriel, all Marco needs is one more swing.
Yeah, that's a little bit scary here, and well,
Who likes to flip coins?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I do if I'm Marco, or I don't know if I feel like I need to. I mean, maybe you should, where, the flip side, if you don't do this, you're giving up a bunch of resources to maybe have to flip the coin later. Definitely one situation where if I'm Marco, I'm taking the full 45 seconds to see if I can find a path through the game that maybe is a little bit safer. We haven't seen either of his unrevealed Pokemon, so a little bit hard to think through what options he may definitely have available without knowing those Pokemon, but there's a huge advantage, and you'd hate to throw it.
Absolutely. In the past, we saw it was the Raging Bolt and the Hearthflame Ogerpon in Game 1. Neither of which will want to switch into an Astral Barrage anyway, but Marco wins the speed tie, if indeed it was. Gets the Astral Barrage off, double KO. Calyrex picks up all 4 KOs, and Marco Silva